Moving from splitting to compassion without collapsing into blame, fantasy, or self objecting. When the relationship ends, or when the fantasy collapses, most survivors fall into one of the only states the nervous system can access after narcissistic abuse: moral outrage, externalized blame, obsessive comparison, compulsive searching, self object supply, what did I do wrong, victimhood, idealization, devaluation of yourself, splitting, all good, all bad. This is not character weakness, it's the predictable consequence of ASR3 activation, collapse induced psychotic regression, inverse mirrored reflexive apathy, and the collapse of the false self casing. You're not doing something wrong. Your system is trying to make sense of the psychic rupture. But this phase cannot be the end point. To heal, you must move forward towards compassion, not forgiveness, not reconciliation, not bypassing, but a clear, reality based understanding of the narcissist's original wound, informed by real psychology, not internet fragments. And you only get there when the organising gate begins to stabilise again. Let's walk it. First, outrage, blame, and splitting are ASR3 responses. When the collapse hits, your internal world fractures, your redeemer activates, your false protector suppresses truth, your mute child wakes, your introject enforcer punishes you with their absence. Reality destabilizes, the nervous system locks into danger. This is ASR3 survival, not a moral stance. Moral outrage is not about them, it's about stopping the internal freefall. Blame is not about justice, it's about creating a sense of control again. Victimhood is not self pity, it is ASR1 residue, searching for the absent mother who never came. Splitting, they are a monster, I am worthless, is the psyche's emergency attempt to contain too much fear. Every survivor starts here. No one bypasses this stage. Not you, not me, not anyone. Second, compassion is impossible until the gate reopens. Compassion is not a moral decision, it is a capacity, and that capacity shuts down under collapse. So when people say, just have compassion, they're wounded. It's psychological nonsense. You cannot access compassion when ASR3 is hijacked, your introjects are screaming, your sense of self is collapsing, your object field is contaminated, you're still internally fused to the fantasy, your trauma circuitry is firing. Compassion emerges only when the self is safe enough to perceive reality again. It is a later stage healing outcome. Third, real compassion begins with seeing the original wound. And this part is only possible when you stop learning about narcissistic personality disorder from surface level online creators and start learning through those which provide clinical, academic, and structural formulations. This is what Wagner unlocked. The narcissist's entire relational world collapses if they allow you to exist as a separate person. That is the original wound. They cannot tolerate two minds, two perspectives, two centers of gravity, two internal worlds. Your separateness threatens the cohesion of their psyche, so they collapse your autonomy, not because they are evil, but because they are psychically unsafe in the presence of another real person. This does not excuse what they do, it explains why it happens. And explanation is what frees you. Fourth, compassion is not softness, It is precision. Compassion is simply the moment you can say, what they did was harmful, but what built them was harm too. It means you no longer take the abuse personally. You no longer internalize their absence. You no longer fuse with their fantasy. You no longer use their introject against yourself. You no longer see them as omnipotent. You no longer romanticize their internal chaos. You no longer participate in the psychic loop. Compassion is the release of identification, not the return of the relationship. Fifth, compassion protects you, not them. Here's the truth: you eventually meet the narcissist with compassion because you finally understand you lived a murdered version of their internal world. Both of you lived without safety, lived without stable mirroring, lived with a fractured sense of self, lived with absence, lived with impossible longing, lived in fantasy to survive, lived in avoidance of unbearable feelings. You lived the survivor's version of their wound. They lived the narcissistic version of yours. That's why compassion arises naturally, not because you should, but because you finally see the symmetry. And once you see that symmetry clearly, the entanglement breaks. Last, compassion does not mean staying, excusing, or returning. It means clarity. It means adulthood. It means separation. It means I see what happened. I understand the architecture, but I no longer collapse myself to meet it. Compassion is simply the moment your psyche stops fighting the past and begins returning to itself. And lastly, most importantly, compassion comes when we take accountability for our own actions, behaviors, desires, and longing. Peace out. Loads of love.